Now we turn to the future of our health care. As you know, health care was a dominant issue in the 2018 midterms, and it constantly ranks as one of the top 3 issues for voters in 2020. Now this week, good news on the health insurance front. Rates for Obamacare policies, they're dropping, down 4%. Now this is the second straight year that that's happened, which is especially impressive given all the work the current administration has done to try and sabotage the system. And don't kid yourself, they're still trying. The White House is still backing a lawsuit aimed at declaring Obamacare unconstitutional, which would dump, as you know, millions and millions of Americans from insurance rolls. It would also end the popular protections in the law, like those for people with pre-existing conditions. And Republicans, despite years of touting repeal and replace, they still got no replacement. Meanwhile, 2020 Democrats, they're all over the place when it comes to health care. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they want Medicare for All. Bernie has said he'll raise taxes to pay for it. Warren, however, she's caught heat for not explaining exactly how she'd fund it. Joe Biden, he wants to keep Obamacare. He says improve it and expand it by giving people the option of using Medicare. New polls show both Obamacare and universal coverage, they're popular with American voters. Latest numbers from Kaiser showed the majority support for Obamacare, which it's had now for 4 straight years. And Americans also support the specific protections in the ACA, like the aforementioned pre-existing conditions and keeping your kid on the insurance till he or she's 26. But an even bigger majority, 2/3 of all voters now, they back government health insurance for everyone. And as you'd expect, in today's day and age, it sharply breaks along party lines. 91% of Democrats in support, 2/3 of independents also, but only 1/3 of Republicans. Let's bring in our guest, Rick Unger. He joins us to discuss. He hosts of the nationally syndicated radio show, as you guess, The Rick Unger Show. All right, Rick, say the Democrats come knocking on your door and say, should this be a big campaign issue for us, and what should our message be?
Well, certainly healthcare should be a very big campaign issue, and it's going to be. The message part gets a little bit tricky, doesn't it? One of the problems that we're seeing is if you listen to the American public, they are saying we do like the idea of the opportunity to get a Medicare for All type of a plan, a single payer, call it what you will. But at the same time, they're telling us they're not necessarily ready to drop their private health insurance. They seem to want to take a wait-and-see approach to it. Let me see this government plan get set up. Let me see how it's working for those who go on the plan. And hey, if it looks good, I'll be more than happy to switch to it. The problem is that some of these candidates are trying to force something else, I don't want to say down their throats, but they are pushing something else, which would involve doing away with private health insurance. That is not going to sell. In fact, if you look at the most recent polls, you will see that the support for Medicare for All is down. It's down about 5%. And the reason for that is twofold. One, they don't like the idea of not having the choice. And two, nobody is telling anybody what it's going to cost them.
Do we have an idea, Rick, what the price tag would be?
We have an idea what the price tag to the country will be. You've had a few studies. They've come out roughly the same, at around $32 trillion for over a 10-year period if we're talking about Medicare for All. But that's not the issue right now. That's not the information we need to get. I understand $32 trillion. I understand that I'm not going to have to pay my premiums anymore, and instead I'm going to be paying a tax. But what I don't know if that tax I will pay will be roughly the same as the premium was. Will it be more? Will it be less? And until the candidates can answer that question, they're going to encounter a problem. We've never had the studies done on that. You know, I have made Bernie Sanders angry because I continuously point this out to him. Where is the study that's going to tell us what it will cost each of us? Bernie says, hey, it works in Europe, so it should work here. That's not true. We know that every state that has attempted to bring a single-payer plan into effect in that state, Vermont, California, they couldn't do it because the price went too high. You've got one of the leading professors down at Emory University saying, according to his calculations, 70% of American households would end up paying more than what they're paying in their premiums. I love the idea of Medicare for All. I have supported it for years, but you can't sell it until you can tell people what it's going to cost them and whether it's going to be more, maybe for better insurance, or less or the same. And we don't know that.
Rick, I mentioned the administration's plan is to fully get behind the suit saying that Obamacare, the ACA, was unconstitutional. How real is it that could actually be upheld given the makeup of this court?
It's real, and we're still at the appellate court level. But I have to say this to you, Rich. You know, one thing you have to point out, even though you gave the good news up front, and the news is fantastic, do you know that the Secretary of Health and Human Services had the nerve to announce this great thing happening with Obamacare and gave credit for it to Donald Trump? He said, isn't it amazing that the guy who has been trying to kill it has done a better job running it than the guy who created it? What a bunch of baloney. We always knew that the markets would eventually settle down. People in this country have a very short attention span. They want it to happen yesterday. It took this long for the markets to sort out. It took this long for insurance companies to figure out how to offer the benchmark Obamacare plan and do it in a way where they can make money and start to reverse the premium trends. They figured it out. We are seeing a great many more insurance companies coming into the healthcare exchange in 2020 than we've had in a very long time because they figured it out. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump, I promise you. This has everything to do with the market finally starting to find its equilibrium despite Donald Trump.
And one last point, Rick, I think people have collective amnesia. How hard it was to get the ACA passed in the first place. All the horse trading, and the idea that somebody's going to come in, let's say from the aforementioned, whether it be Warren or Sanders, and that they're going to find the votes to throw out a popular plan and go to something with more questions than answers. I just think we waste so much time in these debates going over something that's fantasy land.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Rich. I mean, look, the reality is they're both playing to win the primary race. And so they're telling the base, the more progressive side of the Democratic Party, what they think they want to hear. The problem is, and I've had this problem with Bernie Sanders' plan, and again, I will point out, I support Medicare for All, but it's got to pencil out. Bernie's plan doesn't work. It's that simple. I've done the math. It's not going to work. Elizabeth Warren, she says she's going to give us the plan. That's great. I hope it does work. I fervently hope that it works. But they're selling snake oil to a large respect, and they're going to have to come back from it should either of them win the Democratic primary, because they cannot campaign in a general election on this.
Last question off the beaten path, and that is impeachment strategy. We're getting some mixed messages as to timelines when the Democrats will basically open the doors and then in the end actually have a vote. We showed an interesting poll. Consistently, poll after poll, the majority of Americans not only want the president impeached but removed, but when you go to those battleground states, the states that Trump narrowly won, the plurality still don't want that. It's close, but they still don't want that. Is that the threshold that Pelosi is going to look at to say how fast to move, how broad to move? What's the calculation they have to make here? Decide, the whole line. If you're going to kill the king, you better kill the king.
Well, at this point, I think the ship has sailed in terms of those decisions. She's in it now. For better or for worse, she's in it. And I have to say this, Rich, I tend to be kind of tough on my fellow Democrats in Congress. I don't think that they often run these kinds of things as strategically as I would like. I think they've done a really, really good job here. We know what's going to happen next. Somewhere around the middle of November, they will open up the hearings. You're going to see some of the very same people who have been giving depositions behind closed doors. They will not come out and testify in the open hearing so the American public can hear them. My hope, by the way, is that the Republicans will be given the subpoena power, because I want them to have the opportunity to put on witnesses who they believe will counter those witnesses that would take a position that the president did something wrong here. This needs to be transparent and open. However the American public is going to ultimately react, we really don't know. I'm a little bit surprised that we've come as far as we have, with over half of the public clearly supporting the inquiry and almost half, if not more than half, actually supporting impeaching and convicting and throwing him out of office. But until the public gets to hear the evidence, hear the witnesses, hear the testimony, we don't know how this ends up.
Hey, Rick, I appreciate it. Thank you so much as always, and thank you for also clearing up some of those outstanding questions relating to health care.
Sure.
All right, everybody, when we come back, co-host of The View, Sunny Host, she joins us to discuss her new podcast. It's an incredible true crime story. Sounds like a Hollywood movie, but it doesn't have a Hollywood ending. That and more after this.